for women and girls in science. In terms of the presentation, what I'll do is I'll just tell you quickly about the format. So firstly, I will start with food for thought and what the presentation will be about. I will then tell you a bit about social media and the internet, and also then how it influences girls and women. And then I will go into UNESCO and girls in STEM education. And then talking about girls in science and engineering, specifically in terms of research for engineering, computer science, and then a bit about the different UNESCO partnerships and programs that we have for young women in science and engineering. And then finally, I'll wrap up with how do we get more young girls and women into ICT and STEM, but also how do we keep them in there. So starting with food for thought. We find that a UN study says that more people in the world have mobile phones than toilets. So 6 of the world's 7 billion people have mobile phones, but there are only 4.5 toilets. And in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals, in terms of engineering, in terms of sanitation and health, of course this says that we definitely need to invest more in the sphere. We also find that now there are more mobile phones in the whole of Africa than there are in the USA, with a 2,600% increase. We also find that there's close to 4 billion people who now use the internet, and this is a 50% penetration of the global population. In terms of internet penetration, it's different in different parts of the world. We find that the continental average for Africa is about 15.6%. But then if we look at different countries, we find that in UK, it's really high at around 84%, but then it's much lower in countries like Somalia. So moving on to social media and the internet. I'm sure the statistics have changed in social media, as they usually do, because we're in this world now where we're surrounded by social media. But what we find is that as of the first quarter of 2015, and this is on the next slide, we find that Facebook has had 1.4 billion monthly active users, and this translates to 50% of the internet users worldwide. We also find that YouTube reported over 72 hours of videos uploaded every single minute. Twitter averaged 236 million per month of active users. And then we find that some 500 million people use the WhatsApp mobile text messaging application. And in India alone, the WhatsApp users have reached 70 million per month. Okay, and on the next slide, going on to UNESCO and girls in STEM education, we find that UNESCO is quite diverse because we have 5 sectors, which is education, culture, communication and information, and social and human sciences, and then the natural sciences section. The global priorities is gender equality and Africa. Considering just STEM education, especially for girls, we find that the challenges are there's a decrease in interest among youth studying STEM. So it's not just a problem in terms of girls, but we're losing young people going into science and technology and engineering as well as maths. And STEM is stereotyped as a male-dominated field, especially the hard sciences like maths, physics, and engineering. So we need to change mindsets. We need to change communities and civil society, as well as the gender role stereotypes about girls and women. There's a need for strong women role models in STEM that encourage young women to take up scientific careers. And we also find that women in these scientific careers who raise a family while doing research also find this to be a huge challenge. If we look at girls in science and engineering, we find that around the world at the moment we have around, or we're lucky to have around 18% of women in engineering. And if we look at science, we have around 30% of women in science. But if we look at the life sciences alone, there are around 50% of women in the life sciences. In Europe, the average percentage of women in engineering is around 16.6%, whereas in the US it averages around 20%. But we find that if we look at different countries, the UK has around 9% of women in engineering. And in different countries in Africa, like South Africa has around 12%, whereas Kenya has around 10%. So it's not only a divide between North and South, but it's also, it's a problem in all countries around the world. So what UNESCO is trying to do is that we're trying to create strong role models in terms of Goodwill Ambassadors, UNESCO L'Oreal Women in Science, which is a program I will tell you more about very soon. If we look at women in research, we find that the share of women in research goes down as we go higher up, and we have the leaky pipe syndrome, where at a bachelor women at bachelor's degrees level, there's about 53% of women, which translates into masters. But when we go from PhDs down to female research, we find that around the world we have an average of around 28% of women in research. And this is studies done in the UNESCO Science Report, which was published last year. And but there are also these disparities from one region to another. So looking at where we are, if we look at Central Asia and Latin America, we have around 44%. But in the European Union, it's just one in 3 women who are researchers. And then it goes up in the Arab states with 37%. And then we also find that in sub-Saharan Africa, it's not too bad with 30% of women compared to Southeast Asia, where there's only 17% of women. If we look on the next slide, looking at women in engineering, as I said before, women are consistently underrepresented in engineering, and we find that we're lucky if we get around 19% in most of Europe and North America, which is the general average. But you know, there are differences in this, because if we look at Finland, it's around 22%, but then in Cyprus we have 50% of engineering graduates who are women and 38% in Denmark. There are regional exceptions as well, where the share of graduating women in engineering has risen in sub-Saharan Africa and also in the Arab states and in parts of Asia. And then what's really interesting is if we look at the 7 Arab countries that were chosen for the study that was done, we find that it is great that in Oman we have an astonishing 53% of women who are in engineering. On the next slide of women in computer science, we find that computer science shows a steady decrease in female graduates since 2000, especially in high-income countries. And the exceptions in Europe are in Denmark, where the female graduates increased from 15 to 24%, and in Germany from 10 to 17%. However, these figures are still low. The situation in Latin America and the Caribbean is not very positive, because we find that the women graduates have dropped by between 2 to 13% since 2000. And of course there are exceptions to this, where Turkey, the percentage of women graduating in computer science rose from 29 to 33%. And in India as well, we have the image of engineering changed among young women. On the next slide, so next I will tell you a bit about the different partnerships and the programs that UNESCO has for young women in STEM and engineering. We have the UNESCO L'Oreal partnership, which started in 1998, and it has awarded and recognized more than 87 laureates from 30 countries. What's really interesting about this program is that 2 of these laureates have went on to win the Nobel prizes in their fields. It's also we also have the fellowship programs, where more than 2,000, around 2,200 women in 110 countries have received scholarships to go overseas and do research during their PhD or postdoctorate. Last year, in March 2016, UNESCO, together with L'Oreal, launched the Manifesto for Women in Science, and I've added the link right there, where at the moment we have around 90,000 signatories. But it will be great if we have more people going online, because it draws attention to the need to ensure gender parity in science. And there's also 6 points of how we can achieve this. On the next slide, a bit about the Women in Science projects is that we have the Explore the Data, where the UNESCO Institute of Statistics measures and assesses sex disaggregated data. We also have the STEM and Gender Advancement Program, which contributes to reducing the gender gap in STEM fields by measuring and assessing disaggregated data. Then in terms of hydrology and water, we have the gender-sensitive water monitoring assessment and reporting, where there's significant gender imbalance in water resource management. So this report aims to develop and test the collection of key sex disaggregated water data. Another initiative that we have on the next slide is the UNESCO Youth Mobile Initiative. And this was created in 2014 to offer introductory courses in computer programming and problem solving. And what's really interesting is that it's a big part of it is to reach out to young women, and thus they've implemented the Gender and ICTs program to reduce the gender digital divide, and then the commitment and heightened motivation of girls to pursue careers in the ICT sector, especially in terms of mobile. And talking about mobile, on the next slide we have the Mobile Learning Week, which is run by our education sector and is a flagship program in ICTs and education conference. Okay, I will also tell you about the UNESCO STEM collaboration, where during the Mobile Learning Week, UNESCO and Intel launched the Young Women in Engineering in Africa Acceleration Program. And this program helps to keep young women in their studies in engineering so that we do not have the leaky pipe syndrome and they complete their studies, but they can go on to do post-graduate studies as well through mentorship and also getting research projects which are outside of the box. And then we also have an action brief together with the education sector, which is gender-focused workshops for education and policymakers. And then on the next slide, so as I was saying about Mobile Learning Week, we find that the event has experts from around the world on how to work with mobile technology, and we can accelerate learning for all, particularly people living in disadvantaged communities, but it also has a strong focus to help women and girls to use mobile technology. And there I've given you 2 examples which you could also read. So finally, in concluding, the last slide, how do we get more women and girls into ICTs, and especially how do we keep them in ICTs and STEM? So to bridge this wide gap in technology ownership and use for economic empowerment, we should strive to encourage technology ownership and use by women and girls, and this would also encourage entrepreneurship in a way. And we should ensure that there's no gender bias in technology, especially with devices for girls and boys. And this also translates back into toys for girls and boys, which is another topic, but it relates here. And we should ensure that girls and women have role models and strong mentors in the technology fields, as as I've mentioned, a few programs that we do have in this field. And finally, we need to develop policies to ensure access and use of STEM education tools and ICTs for girls and women while protecting them online. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rovani, for such a comprehensive presentation. I would like to remind you all that Rovani Sigamoney is the Assistant Program Specialist, Innovation and Capacity Building in Science and Engineering section at UNESCO. Rovani is a chemical environmental engineer from South Africa who started in the platinum refinery mining sector and then moved on the researching bioenergy systems and biofuels in Africa. She joined UNESCO in 2007 and she is working for UNESCO engineering program. We found out about UNESCO's work, about the interesting programs and the projects, and I'm sure our community is very keen to get more information, and you'll be able to ask all these questions after all the presentation at the end during the Q&A session. As Rovani mentioned, and as we already shared in our announcements, today's webinar is organized in advance to International Day of Women and Girls in Science. We all know that this is a very important topic currently, especially with the changing world of work. And we also know that this is one of more demanding, one of the topic of discussion that our community demands more information. Here at UN Women, we think UN, has a leading role in information and policy making on that. Women's access to STEAM and their participation in national science, technology, and innovation systems are necessary for us to realize the Sustainable Development Goals. Previously, we had several webinars and we discussed about this in relation to, skills of 21st century and then Agenda 2030. At the same time, science, technology, and innovation are key to ensuring successful implementation of this agenda. So addressing the concern of gender gaps in science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, it's a very important topic of discussion and action in the same time. In particular, information and communication technology to promote the empowerment of women. Our next panelist is also our friend with whom we already had the opportunity to collaborate in another webinar, as well as with the redesign of the Empower Women platform back in 2016. We all welcome again Hemant Ramachandra. He is a principal and PwC advisory lead. I will just want to say that Hemant is very passionate about women economic empowerment and, of course, women representing and advocating for women and girls in technology. Hemant also is a PwC He for She champion and global support of PwC Women in Technology initiative. More about himself and why technology and innovation and women in STEM and is important for business. We will hear from Hemant.
Thanks, Diana, and hello everyone. Hopefully my connection is good. I'm here in India right now, and I appreciate being on this in this conversation. So while the topic is developing 21st century skills, I'm going to focus in on a few things that are very important from a 21st century perspective. That this is a very nice lead into what Rovani was talking about earlier about the lack of women and girls in STEM and in the computer science field. I myself am a computer science major with a bachelor's in computer science, and I don't code anymore, but my team does, and I'm very focused on making sure we ensure that we bring about the right amount of gender equality in the workplace. So if you go to the next slide, I want to talk about a person that's very important, that is a good model to begin with my conversation. Her name is Chiru. She's from Nairobi, Kenya. I had the opportunity to meet her through the Empower Women organization, and she basically founded a company focused on building children's furniture. But she not only founded that company, but she realized also that she needed to connect with the kids and create a ICT program for them. So she created something called Fun Kids Tech, and as part of the program, that part of her company, she also has this nonprofit arm that actually focuses on teaching ICT to children. Everything from using toys and games to having them decide and use their creative mind on what a smart city would look like to them, just to get them to think about what it is to bring about technology in their world and how to use it in the right way. And I love the quote she has, right? She's most proud of the fact that she dared to do something, and because she dared to dream, she now has this company, and now her company uses technology to streamline building children's furniture. It's a very good story that she has, and someone that I actually talk to a lot and connect with. And I think she's a great model of a successful woman entrepreneur that uses technology not only for her business, but also to educate children. And why is that important? There was a recent study done that by the age of 6, most girls feel that they cannot compete against boys in complex tasks, and we need to change that. And you have to start at a very young age to make that happen. And frankly, to start at the age of 6. So to get girls to focus on STEM, to get girls to go into computer science, we had to start at a very, very early age, so that when they go to university, they pick the right programs to go after, and then they become members of the working class, so that we can actually leverage their very important contributions that are needed for us to be successful. I know that in my business and in PwC, we are very focused on ensuring we bring about gender equality, because we know that we cannot be successful in the marketplace and differentiate ourselves without having the right type of gender equality and the right type of focus in STEM and in computer science. Next slide. So very quickly, what is the global landscape and the global competency? Everything is interconnected. What we do today is we're all connected in the world, whether it's through the mobile phone or through browsing through a website or any type of social media. Social media plays a very important role. So for a person to be globally competent, for both men and women, boys and girls, you have to be able to develop the right type of 21st century skills. And especially for girls and women, where the focus in STEM and computer science doesn't necessarily go with them as they get older, and then they focus on other type of degree, and then there's a disparity and gap in the workplace where there are more men focused on STEM and computer science versus the number of women. I know that when I was in college, earning my degree, we didn't have that problem, at least in my university. We actually had a lot of women who actually focused on computer science and in the engineering field. And the drop did start in the mid-90s, and definitely, just like Rovani said, in 2000s. And now we're paying that price in the technology field where we have this disparity. So, but it's very important that when we talk to when we mentor the young girls to become focus PT, they need to learn what does it mean to have a 21st century skills. So if you go to the next slide. So what are 21st century skills? We kind of break it down to 3 categories. The foundational literacy, so numeracy is very important, so math is extremely important. Literacy is very important, obviously, and ICT, scientific literacy is important. You need to have civic and cultural literacy, and you have to have financial literacy. Those are the basic things you need to have. And then from a competency perspective, you need to be competent. You have to have good communication skills. You need to be able to know how to collaborate. You need to be creative, and you need to have the ability to have critical thinking, because these are very important to be successful in the workplace. And then from the right type of character skills, you need to be curious. If you're not curious, you're not going to learn. You need to have the right initiative. You need to be persistent, adopt, be a leader, and be socially aware and culturally aware. And that also includes social media. Next slide. Okay, so some of the things I want to talk about, I won't touch on all of this stuff, you can look through it. To be successful in the workplace today, so not just, if you take a young girl and mentor her, and she becomes interested in STEM, and she becomes interested in computer science, and she gets a degree in computer science, and she gets a job, but if she's not taught and mentored around how to build the right relationships, how to be a continuous learner, how to be inclusive in your success, and how to be creative, and how to become a leader, they're not going to be successful. It's not just learning a programming language. It's not just learning, mechanical engineering or, getting a PhD in biology or physics and math. It's also having these 8 core skills that are very, very, very important to be successful. And there is this tendency where women do struggle in this area because they don't have the right kind of sponsorship and mentorship to help them in using these or developing these skills along with the great skills they learn in the university. So this is extremely, extremely important. And one last thing I'm going to point out here, networking is critical. And networking outside of your comfort zone is extremely important to be successful in the science and technology space, because that allows you to collaborate with your partners, that allows you to learn more things and then become an innovator and make a difference not only in your company but also in society. So these are very, very important skills to develop. Next slide. Okay. Next slide, please. All right. So very quickly, the 4 key areas that you want to focus on when you're looking to solve the gender gap, or when you come into a company like mine and you want to be successful. You want to have collaboration. I talked about that in our firm, in many companies. We all collaborate and we work in a collaborative manner globally. I'm sitting here in Bangalore, India today, and I'm here because I have a team here that does software development. I have clients that are interested in outsourcing work from the U.S. to India. Later on tomorrow, I'm flying all the way to Shanghai. Why? I have a team there. It's a global network. We work together and we collaborate and we make sure that we make our clients successful, and we do that not only by bringing the right skill sets, but by making sure that we leverage the skills that all the women organizations have and all the men have. Another important part on the top right-hand side is the online learning. How do you get some of the skills? So one area of focus is, you look at the Western Hemisphere, frankly, going to college is a lot easier in the Western Hemisphere compared to other locations. I do a lot of volunteer work in East Africa, and we're looking at, and actually working with Empower Women, Diana and her team, on developing strategies around online learning, right? Creating this virtual skill schools concept. And we have realized that to bring about education and the right kind of mentorship, online learning is going to become a very, very important feature of growing the capabilities of young girls and the women, but also more importantly, reducing the gender gap. Another important part of that is another nonprofit I work with called Code to Inspire, where we teach young girls in Afghanistan to learn coding. We do this all virtually. They go to a school, of course, there in Afghanistan. And if you think about it, right, with all the dangers that exist in Afghanistan right now, we are still able to educate these young girls who want to learn software development. And we do this by teaching mentors how to teach them software coding, and we teach also classes remotely with them. It's a very new program. It's a little over a year old, but we're able to make it happen because of the online learning capabilities. Another important thing is gamification. When you want to build something and you want to be successful as an entrepreneur, you want to gamify things because it makes it fun. You want to it creates an incentive for people to learn more and also to become more socially and ethically aware. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later. And then, of course, I talked about online learning, but it's also e-learning, which is basically the same thing, giving equal access to everyone, because that's extremely important. Next slide. So I'm going to focus now on areas that are important in our business. What do our clients think about when they want to be what we call digitally enabled and focus on what we call the disruptive type of technologies so that they can be competitive in the market space and make a difference not only for their company to make money, of course, but also in society. So I'm going to look at 4 key areas. Well, social, we all know. We have Twitter, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have other kinds of social media. So social media is all about how do I take advantage of social media to make my company successful. You have to be very responsible on social media. You have to know, and it's a very powerful tool, but you have to know how to use it properly. So that we all know what that is. So social is all about how we work and then showing that capability. And then the other important part is mobile. Rovani talked about this, right? There are more mobile phones in the world than toilets, right? So think about this. Almost everyone on the planet has a mobile phone, and I'm going to give you a statistic later to show you that. But everything we do in our work today, our clients, our customers, the philosophy is a mobile-first philosophy. What does that mean? If I'm going to design a software program or technology, I'm going to design it based on how will the end user, the people that are using that technology, interact with me through a mobile device. So that's how we kind of use that mindset to bring about the right type of technology and frameworks. So the next part is analytics. One very important thing, and most of you probably are aware of this, is that there's a lot of data around in the world, right? What do I do with all that data? How do I learn from that data? So analytics plays a very important part in this. what do we work on? So by analyzing the data, we can then make smart decisions on what to do next. We can then also target the right a group of people with the right type of targeting information. So that analytics is a very, very important skill to have. In fact, I would say that one of the most important skills that we can develop is a data scientist. They're going to become the most important people in the next. They're already very important, but their importance will continue to grow. The last thing around the idea of SMAC is cloud. The days of where we store everything on our own local computer is going to be gone. Everything is going to be stored on a cloud. How do I have access to that information? What that does for you, though, is in a global environment where I need to send information to someone very quickly, and I need to be able to create a collaborative environment, cloud plays a very, very important role in that. So as we try to reduce the gender gap in STEM and try to reduce the gender gap in technology and ICT, these 4 things will play an important role. So what's the next 5 years hold from a mobile perspective? In 2015, you'll see that the population of the world, 7.2 billion, we have 15 billion mobile devices, and in 5 years and 4 years for us now, less than 4 years, we're going to just expand to the number of mobile devices. There's going to be more mobile devices out there than the number of people on the planet, and that just goes to show you what it takes, what we have to do and what we need to learn to make things successful. Next slide. So what are some of the user trends? Something to keep in mind. So let's say you as a person has decided, hey, I want my daughter, or I as a woman want to learn technology or something in the STEM field. We have to think about what the trends are going on right now. So in the old world, it was not about creating a personalized experience. It was not about you, me. But in this world, it's all about you and me. So when we build something, when we use technology, always remember who is the user of your technology. You have to personalize that experience for them. And also, there's a lot of frequent usage. I know that when I walk down the road, I'm on my phone checking on things, making decisions based on what that device is telling me. So that's another thing, is a lot of frequent touch points. And in this world, in the old world, you would access information when you're in the office or when you're home and had internet access. In this world, you're always accessible. Everyone's accessible, and all the data information is accessible to you. And then another thing that's very important in the 21st century that's it's taking off and it's booming is the idea of sensor and context. So you think about, we have this thing called the Internet of Things, right? Or smart homes, smart offices, smart city. That is going to be something that's going to help make a difference. I'll give you a quick example. Let's say I have a sensor in a department store. I can walk in there, the sensor detects my phone, it goes and checks based on a unique ID. My phone, all phones have unique IDs. It goes to it, it checks in the back end and says, oh, that's Hemant Ramachandra. The last time he came to the store was a year ago, and he went and bought this. Then they already know what my interests are, when's the last time I came in, and they can target me specifically and personalize my experience. And that world is already here, and it'll continue to grow and grow as things become, as you get more and more smart devices. So very quickly, I'm being moved quickly around this. So today, the phone keeps me connected. Tomorrow, it's already started. The phone is an extension of myself. So for example, if you lose your phone, we're all frantically looking for it. So it's extremely important on our experience, the proactiveness, the relationship, the personalization, the aspirational goals we have in making the experience successful. And that's something very important to keep in mind when you want to be in this field, is to personalize that experience. Next slide. So very quickly, analytics. Data analytics is a science of examining raw data and it's determining and coming to a conclusion with that information. So just churning through all that data. You don't do this on your own. You use smart programming languages to make that happen. Use analytic tools to make that happen. And that's another major field that's extremely important for us. We see this cross-section of interaction between the systems that collect the data and then the data analytics systems that actually help us make decisions. Next slide. So there's something called STEEP. And what does that mean? Decision making is always influenced by external factors. So these are like external factors, social, what is going on in society, what is social media saying, that helps influence how we make decisions, technological decisions. So we know that technology is changing every day basically, and that helps us make the right decisions. Environmental, Diana said there's a snowstorm going on right now, right, in the New York area. There are already decisions that were made by many companies the day before to shut down the offices because it didn't make sense to have people come in. But you can also use analytics to make that decision based on the environmental data out there. And of course, economic trends. You can see what's going on in the world today from an economics perspective and make decisions that way. And of course, politics, us, the folks in America, and myself, when I go back home to the U.S., we know that right now we're in a very disruptive political environment in the U.S., and that's going to drive a lot of decisions that we have to make. All that data that comes out of these other decisions that are made by the government and everything influences how we make our business decisions. Should I change my healthcare process because I'm worried about what the Affordable Care Act will become soon? These are the kind of decisions that will be made based on the data that they get from the government. Next slide. And then the last thing is computing, cloud computing. So we talked about the importance of cloud. Think about Google Drive. Most of us on this webinar, all of us have used Google Drive or are using it today. And then if you think about from a media perspective, many of us use Netflix. So Netflix, all the movies and everything that we watch, the shows, are all sitting in the cloud, and we just have access to that information. And we have to have, as long as we have internet connection, which is very critical, of course, we have access to that data. And of course, many of us who have iPhones, we use iCloud. Next slide. And then last thing I want to talk about is gamification. Why is gamification important? It is something that brings people together, and it creates this idea of a competition so that we can improve on the idea, and we can create a more inclusive type of environment. And one of the things that I've learned through our studies and through how we do our work is gamification plays a very important role in engaging with the audience. So one of the things that we look at is how do we gamify learning and then have the girls in school be interested in doing technology work and focusing on STEM. So this is a very important part of software development is gamification. So you think about it, like I can earn badges, I can show my progress, and if I get a high score in another, that's how I know that I'm doing better or I'm improving myself. So Diana, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Hemant. I'll remind everyone who joined us from the beginning and those who joined maybe with a little bit of delay, but Hemant is a principal in PwC Advisory, leading a global practice focused on digital transformation and development for clients across multiple industries. He has over 20 years of experience in strategy, design, development, and implementation of systems integration, mobility, digital, and you saw kind of how in a very simplistic way he explained us basically that science and technology is not inherently elite, or it's not only about the gadgets. STEAM has the power to disrupt and shift trajectories as it's increasingly influenced all aspects of life today, from economic opportunities into sectors that we apply, productive sectors, including help women grow businesses and social enterprises. And Hemant, speaking about them, global collaboration. How fun is it? I'm joining today from New York City. Rovani is joining today from Geneva. You are joining from Bangalore. And Sabin, who is our next panelist, is joining from Dubai. So I think it's one more testimony that nothing is impossible when the world is kind of making it happening. So Sabin Muzaffar is the executive editor of Ananke, an online interactive platform empowering women through awareness, engagement, and education. She has been in the media business for more than 2 decades. So Sabin has worked for, as well as contributed numerous articles and different publications in the region. And about her work, she will speak and about the STEAM development in the Middle East. She will speak today in more details, but I would just to proudly say that Sabin is a former Empower Woman champion for women economic empowerment and a current Empower Woman mentor. We kind of brainstorm about this webinar together. So thank you, Sabine, for being over there with us. And please share with us your presentation and your thoughts.
Thank you, Diana, and hello, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to participate in a conversation that is so important and one that we need to have constantly. So very quickly about women's economic empowerment through tech. I'll begin with the first slide. The importance of women's participation in economic activities globally, regionally, and on a national level cannot be emphasized enough. Comprising half of the population, women need to be, they need to play a huge role when it comes to global markets. We need to harness women's potential, and it can trigger growth. So why do we need STEM? In the next slide, we're talking about technology, empowerment through technology. Technology is said to be the driver of the fourth industrial revolution, and on the other hand, women are said to be the third billion. So I think that is reason enough why women need to participate in tech sector, not just tech sector, but in all STEM fields, because they can help trigger disruptive innovation. It does make business sense and sustainable development. In the next slide, I had a chat with the founder of Miracle Foundation, an organization that strives to empower women in STEM. And Mira was basically of the opinion, she said that it is important to include women's perspective from development to design, as 50% of users of these products are women. So next slide, please. I'll just quickly, because of lack of time, I want to just quickly say some important points. So what are the drivers of disempowerment in STEM? It starts with different cultures of care that is rooted in the society's patriarchal mindset, and that basically gives way to gendered roles, gender discrimination, unconscious biases, women's role, basically. Next slide. So what are the challenges that women in tech, or broadly speaking in STEM, face? One of the biggest challenges women face in tech sector is discrimination based on stereotype and gendered roles. It is important to face the challenge of, we need to increase women participation in tech sector. And not just that, we need to retain women in tech. I had a conversation with Elena Percival of Women Who Code, and she was on page with me. It is so important to have women, retain women in tech, because if you don't have them, then there would be a lack of female role models. Other challenges include cultivating an ecosystem based on inclusion and reintroducing care culture based on equality and shared responsibility, not just on a familial level, but corporate and other societal level as well. So the impact the impact is, because of the impact is huge when it comes to, low participation of women in STEM. It starts with, gendered roles, especially in Eastern societies where women are conditioned to actually act, behave, and move in a specific way. Women, it's their birthright. Care responsibilities is perceived as a woman's birthright. And most importantly, men are still considered as sole breadwinners of families. So preferential treatment is given to them, not just in the corporate level, but it starts from schools and right from the early childhood, from schools, colleges, etc. More and more menial jobs are assigned to women, especially fresh graduates, compared to men, and less female mentors due to non-availability of women in leadership and C-suite positions impact this low participation. I had a chat with the fellow global champion, Empower Women Global Champion for Women's Economic Empowerment, Gladys Muthara, who is currently an Empower Women mentor. And in the next slide, she basically opined that a woman's role in Africa is primarily to take care of her family and her children, but due to high expectations attached to that woman who basically decides to pursue her tech career, she's under extreme pressure to perform both at family and at work level. So at the end of the day, she gets weary fast and may become unproductive. In another chat with Sadaf Abid, co-founder of Circle, which is a Pakistani organization on a mission to advance women's economic participation, she said that women are the most underutilized potential of Pakistan and have a pivotal role to play in our country's prosperity. So next slide, please. So coming to women in tech in the Middle East, it is important to note that although there are more women in tech in the Middle East than in any part of the world. It was reported by BBC, and the United Nations also recognizes the UAE to be among the most developed nations in educating women. Most important and surprising statistic was Middle East women represent 35% of all internet entrepreneurs in the Middle East compared to just 10% worldwide. Next slide, please. So I interviewed a girl, Habiba Weil, who's actually one of our interns at Ananke. Although such examples like the one that you see on the screen do exist, the vibe as far as the UAE is concerned is a little different. The UAE aims to be among the top 25 nations worldwide excelling in the fields of women's empowerment. And women's empowerment is a key target in the UAE's national strategy aimed to be achieved by 2021. That is what Sheikha Lubna Al-Qasimi, Minister of State for Tolerance, basically said in an opening ceremony for the first meeting of United Nations Secretary General's high-level panel on women's economic empowerment in the MENA region just 2 days ago. Next slide, please. So coming to Ananke's case study, just to briefly introduce Ananke, it is an online interactive platform empowering women through engagement, awareness, and education. We have several programs, including Ananke's internship, global internship program, where women and girls from all over the world can work digitally, and it's an eye-opening experience for them, for they learn what technology can do. I mean, it's not just being social, but
Sabin, we lost you.
Yes.
We cannot hear you.
Okay. So can you hear me now?
Please continue. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So Ananke, just to quickly talk about Ananke, we're an interactive program platform empowering women digitally. We have different programs where women and girls from all over the world can work in a virtual office together quite seamlessly, and it is an eye-opening experience for them, for they learn where the real power of technology lies. Next slide, please. So in September 2016, Ananke's interns conducted a survey in 4 different universities in Pakistan, Nigeria, Kenya, and the USA. And most of the students and faculty belong to different engineering fields. And although female students were the primary respondents, male respondents were also participated in the survey. The survey basically helped us understand the thinking pattern of women in STEM education. It showed a higher percentage of women's participation in STEM education, as well as showing women's readiness to face challenges. The findings of that survey shows that when we asked students from a Nigerian university, 70% of them did say that there was gender discrimination as far as STEM education is concerned, compared to just 40% in Pakistan. There was both the students in Pakistan as well as in Nigeria claimed that 50% of them said that there was a lack of awareness. Next slide, please. So the findings, there was another survey conducted by the Ananke's interns in Kenya, and it noted that out of 27 individuals interviewed, only 5 pursued STEM courses because someone forced them to. This means more women are now more willing to venture into STEM careers, which was previously considered murky waters for women. Next slide, please. So both of our surveys basically found that women do understand the challenges of working in STEM, such as balancing work and parenting, but it is heartening to see that they're willing to take up the challenges and excel in this field. And it also shows that they're willing to go the extra mile because the idea of equal distribution of care work is still non-existent. Coming to biases, about 70% of the students said that men do get promoted more compared to women, and 22% of the respondents said equal opportunities for men and women are, it's only 22% of people said that there is a notion of equal opportunity for both men and women. Next slide, please. Next slide. So the survey basically concluded, the interns basically concluded that gender discrimination, unconscious biases, and a culture of care, basically different or stereotypical culture of care does exist. The survey reaffirmed that gendered roles negatively affect women's mobility and economic empowerment, as a professional life, career becomes secondary when it comes to care work, which is deemed her sole or primary responsibility. It also found that unconscious biases directly stem from countries' patriarchal social systems based on a specific mindset regarding a woman's mobility, social behavior, and mode of expression. From the survey, Ananke's interns concluded, in order to have more women in tech, it is important to have online drives, sharing success stories, examples, having examples of role models, and mentorship. What is surprising for me when the results came, it was surprising for me to note that none of the interns broached upon the topic of care responsibilities. This was primarily because they themselves were not aware of this notion of care, shared responsibilities of care. So recommendations, we basically had a list of recommendations in the end that included gender sensitivity trainings at institutional level, gender sensitive inclusive curriculum, online, offline inclusive discussions, but that should include millennials to speak up as well. Mentorship programs at schools, universities, and corporate level. A working body consisting of stakeholders including civil society, public-private sectors, government, women leaders in STEM to engage and have a dialogue about policies, and creating inclusive policies to encourage participation and retention of women in tech, thereby creating mentors and role models for aspiring women. So that's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sabin. Thank you so much, Rovani and Hemant. Apologies, everyone. We went a little bit over time, but I chose from multiple questions, but you addressed several of them, and probably I can read them, and maybe Rovani, Hemant, and Sabin can take 2 minutes and maybe suggest some quick responses or resources to go for more, and then we will definitely share the recording and the presentation afterwards. So we received a lot of compliments for great presentations, and this goes to our panelists. And thank you once again for being today with us. Hi, I would like to ask Romani if is there a program focused on luck to increase participation of girls and women in STEM? And in this kind of support, in any country, address topics about gender perspective, sensitivity of women, human rights. Then we do have about a question about Mobile Learning Week, and if it will be during 2017. Can local women and Joe participate at the event, since we touched on this topic? Then we do have questions from Manisha, and she asks that there are a lot of digitalized platforms. Many women are learning skills using the platform. Still, we are somehow lagging to create opportunities for growth. What we can do to create opportunities? Questions for Sabin and Hemant. Another question is for all the panelists, who can influence young women to develop their 21st century skills, and how we can learn to do this better? And maybe one last question. It's from Nigeria. Just trying to find very many questions. So maybe until I will find it, Rovani, why don't we start with you?
Thank you, Diana. So thank you very much to everyone for the questions. I think it's really great. And so the first question was, is there a program specifically focused to increase girls and women in STEM? And that's true. So what we've done at the moment, I've explained some of the research we've done, and what I didn't explain was hands-on learning. And I think this is a big component, especially get young people interested and involved in STEM careers. So we've had, there's something that UNESCO has called the microscience kits, where we have, especially for science and biology and chemistry. But just today, we started a new partnership with Women in Engineering, Women's, where we did a hands-on workshop on the Think Pink Hard Hat Challenge. So this ties into the Million Girls in STEM campaign, which we shall be launching at the Commission on the Status of Women in New York next month. And it's a hands-on activity, but also empowering young women to make good decisions in careers, because what we found is, of course, they need role models, but also information is really important. And I think Hemant mentioned this as well, that they need to know what they're going into and what's needed for the future. So so this is why we have the Million Girls in STEM together with Women, and so that will be hands-on. We also have another program called the Teach Her program, which is also then helping train teachers so that they go on and train young people. And this concentrates on on the STEAM camps, and there have been 2 already, one in Africa, in Rwanda, and the other in San Jose, in Costa Rica. And then one of the other questions, Mobile Learning Week. Yes, so Mobile Learning Week is every year, and this year in 2017, I think that it will be during the week of 23rd March, but I would say please Google it and just make sure, because this is just off the top of my head, but I could also send this information, but it is on the UNESCO website if you go Google Mobile Learning Week. And lastly, who can develop the skills for women of the 21st century? I think it's everyone. I think it's civil society, it's education systems that we have in place, but it's actually elders, it's role models, it's older people, but it's also young people as well. I think in terms of, what Hemant and Sabin said, in terms of the information that is all around us, in terms of technology, we have this constant overload of information, and getting the right information across to young people will equip them with the right skills, and also teach them what is needed for the future, so that in terms of the sustainable development goals as well, we have young people who are ready to tackle and solve the problems of the future with innovative solutions that they come up with. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rovani. And I found out one more question. I think I will just address it before Hemant will provide his responses, since you also know more about Nigeria. And in Nigeria, many girls study science courses in universities, but due to lack of job, they go into other fields. How do we address this and ensure that more girls are encouraged to study STEM courses, knowing that there are jobs for them at the end of the day? And this is a question from Miriam. Hemant?
Sure. So very quickly, I want to address the question of Nigeria because I was brought up in Nigeria. I have a special affinity for Nigeria. I'll come back to that question in a second. It is a very valid question. So from influencing young girls and women to go into STEM and into technology, it has to start at a very young age. I will keep saying that, and I do believe that in today's world, it's extremely important to use technology to bring about education. So if you look at, like in the United States, for example, there are many nonprofits out there that are focused on educating girls. There's a nonprofit called Girls Who Code. There's one focused on Latinas, and also Black African American girls. That's called Black Girls Code. And then there are other nonprofit organizations. When you get into Europe, you get similar things. But you also have the corporate sponsorships. I know in PwC, for example, we go out and we start teaching, at an early age, financial literacy, which is a very important learning block to bring about the confidence in young girls to focus on complex things, or what they consider complex, but it's really not complex. It's just that they need to take a leap of faith and start learning those things. So that, I think, and when you come to continents like Africa or in Asia, then it becomes a bit more complex because now you're talking about trying to use technology to bring about education, and the education is focused on ICT or in STEM, but you also have challenges of lack of access to internet and lack of resources. So in Africa and in Asia, we have to become more creative. We actually have to teach the teachers to become the trainers in the end for these students. So one of the things that I personally am focused on in East Africa currently is working with a nonprofit out there in coming up with creative ways of educating teachers in rural settings so that they can then teach ICT to the children and girls especially. And that program is something that we're starting to think about and put out there. So there are different challenges in different hemispheres. So we have to think differently in how we bring about ICT and STEM education and bring about the influence that to make sure that the girls show the interest and embrace the curriculum and become the scientists and technologists that we want them to become. The question from Nigeria, growing up in Nigeria for over 16 years, I definitely can understand where the question is coming from. And it's not only a problem in Nigeria, it's a problem in other parts of Africa too, right? Which is, a young woman goes out and gets an education in science or technology, and then there's an issue of having a job, right? Especially in the science field. So my recommendation is not an easy answer, right? But I would say that during your college education time, collaborate and explore other venues outside of Nigeria where there's a need for scientists. Now, I may be simplifying the challenges of getting to the other area and all that, but there are opportunities in other areas in Africa where scientists are needed. But I will say this about Nigeria too. I think that every country will go through their obstacles, and right now maybe Nigeria is going through this in the science field, but absolutely sure that there will be jobs available. The one thing about Africa, one bright aspect of Africa, and I'm a big believer in this, is that Africa is going to become one of the most important continents for us when it comes to technology and STEM because of the untapped opportunity we have in Africa. And it's just a matter of taking advantage of that in an ethical and moral way, and ensuring the people in Africa benefit from the untapped resources that are there. And that's going to require a lot of push from the Africans themselves to take ownership and management of that capability. So while there may be challenges right now, the opportunities are there in Africa. We just have to find it, and then we have to be patient about it too. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Hemant. Sabin, can you please answer from your end
Yes.
and from the kind of Middle East perspective? Thank you.
So generally, I would like to say through Ananke, we've seen more and more girls interested in, actually entering the STEM fields, and they're constantly on the lookout for venues and platforms. There are a number of platforms that are doing amazing stuff, like the Rhoda Center, Glowwork in Saudi Arabia. There's Gaza Sky Geeks, and there are some amazing women like May Tamaraz. Women's Digital League in Pakistan, Maria Omar is a change maker who's doing amazing stuff, as well as Women in Technology. They're basically focusing on the MENA region. So the girls are in fact embracing, or they're willing and they're eager to come into tech field or STEM fields, but we need to focus on providing a fertile environment to them in homes, in schools, as well as in the corporate world. When you have leadership, and I can give you an example of the UAE, where His Highness Sheikh Mohammed Rashid Al Maktoum basically assigned the UAE, he basically said that Emirati women have proved their competence in all fields, and we're very proud of every achievement they've made, and thus we are committed to support them till they achieve the highest degrees of excellence and accomplish further achievements in line with our ambitious development vision. So when you have leadership encouraging you, I think it does have a domino effect, because then it's a trickle-down effect. The corporate sector needs to be aligned with that vision. The schools and the academic institutions need to be aligned. So primarily from the Middle Eastern perspective, I would say that it's important to have that viable environment, which has to be nurtured by the leadership and to have a trickle-down effect.
Thank you so much, Sabin. Thank you so much once again to our panelists, Rovani, Hemant, and Sabin. We continue to receive questions, and I'm so sorry, everyone, we will not be able to take any questions, but I will just summarize once again that we also continue to receive a lot of compliments for the presentation our panelists made, and we appreciate your kind words, and this is a sign for us that we need to have a follow-up webinar on a similar topics. We promise to collect all the questions, and we promise to address them in another session, maybe with a little bit more details on kind of what are the specific programs in the region. From the UN Women side, we just wanted to let you know that in collaboration with partners, UN Women is working to position women as beneficiaries and contributors to and leaders of science, technology, innovation for the achievement of Agenda 2030 and as a core driver of gender equality. The gaps and barriers are significant, but so too is the collective determination to overcome them. So let's continue the discussion via our network, social media, blogs, in our community, and to celebrate and maybe to advocate the celebration of the International Day of Women and Girls in Science on the 11th February with a concrete action, beginning from we, the drivers of change in the community, and going to our, town hall representatives, countries, and indeed a globe-wide representation. Thank you again to our panelists. Thank you, dear community members. We appreciate your participation. Until next time.